Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here with all of you today. And today's event provides us a powerful opportunity for us to come together, share ideas, and build an action plan to recruit, support, and inspire the next generation of building safety professionals. The industry is facing a severe labor shortage that threatens economic growth, infrastructure development, and even national security. In fact, as George stated earlier today, according to the Associated Builders and Contractors, the building construction industry will need nearly 500,000 new workers in 2026 to meet the anticipated demand for construction services. So what can we do? We must create programs that stimulate interest to pursue careers in construction, the building trades, and of course, building safety. But that alone may not be enough. Advancements in construction methods and technology must also be leveraged to solve the problem. Many experts believe that artificial intelligence can play a key role in addressing the labor shortage. Our industry is already using artificial intelligence to help with talent acquisition, training, and skill development, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Today, our expert panelists will explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping workforce development in the building and construction space. They'll offer practical insights, strategies you can apply to embrace emerging technologies, strengthen our communities, and attract the next generation of construction professionals. And before I bring out Joan, I just want to say a moment of thank you and congratulations to George Gushcha and the entire NIBS team for putting on a great event today. We really do appreciate at ICC the relationship we have with NIBS, and we thank you for the opportunity to be able to sponsor this event and be involved. So thank you very much, George. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Joan O'Neill. Joan is the Chief Knowledge Officer and Executive Vice President of Content and Services at the International Code Council. She will be leading a conversation with our expert panelists, Haida Abeli, co-founder and CEO of SageX, Alex Bosenberg, Manager of Standards Advocacy for the International Society of Automation, Jim Thomas, Vice President and Chief Business Development Officer at the American National Standards Institute. There they are. And of course, Tatiana Kairulina, Vice President and Industry Lead at Outsell. Now please join me in welcoming Joan as she kicks off the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, everybody, for being here. It's been a great morning so far and early afternoon. We're excited about this panel. Just a little bit of guidance that we gave the panelists, really talking about 5 or 6 different things. You know, how does AI really impact your tasks on a day-to-day? So each panelist will go through their own interpretation of that, and I think they're going to give you a really unique perspective. How can AI improve decision-making? We're all dealing with a lot of factors impacting our day-to-day jobs. How can we leverage AI? What's changing with AI and what's not changing? What's remaining the same? Sharing practical tips. How can we use AI to do our jobs better? How is it impacting the building industry? We heard a little bit about that today from Irish, and I thought she gave us a really great perspective. And then what's the future-ready organization look like? I think that's going to be very exciting. So Haida is going to start, and she's going to talk about the AI journey and a human-centered approach. We're going to be followed by Alex, and he's going to talk about leveraging AI in the workforce. And then Tatiana is going to give us some really new, fresh research from Outsell and talk about some of the consumption trends with AI. And then we're going to follow with Jim, and we're going to have kind of an early Q&A with Jim as we kick off the Q&A session. So thank you all, and here we go. Haida.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, so I have a question for all of you. How many of you were on ChatGPT in November 2022 when it first came out? Raise your hand. Anybody? Okay, so a couple folks here. My hand would go up. You know, as it turns out, oh, can we get the presentation on the screen here? Oh, okay, excellent. Let me go back. Sorry about that. The AI journey has been really swift and exponential. It took about 5 days for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users. Compare that to Netflix, 3.5 years. Okay, very quick adoption. Most of us have AI apps on our phone. You probably have foundational models like Claude, Perplexity, OpenAI's, ChatGPT, Gemini. We're probably using those on a regular basis. Many of us are also probably using low or no code apps like Replit. I'm doing that. And we're probably also using Copilots, right? Most of us are using Microsoft Copilot or Google's Copilot. We're using Zoom AI. So 4,000 apps, in fact, in 2024 alone. This is looking a lot like .com. Those of you remember, right? There'll be some dwindling down. But suffice it to say that this has been exponential growth. AI is everywhere. All you need is your phone. Okay? It's increasingly embedded, not just in software, but also in hardware. Your refrigerator is going to have AI. It's going to know more about your eating consumption patterns than your partner, right, in the future. And it's evolving, right? AI is evolving rapidly. It's learning every second, every minute, every hour. And what is that up to? Exponential, okay? So with that as the backdrop, where are we today? Well, we're kind of riding the bicycle, okay? Because assist dominates today. AI really can be helpful with these repetitive tasks, right? The tasks we don't really like to do. Maybe I'll ask AI to create, I used to create a pivot table in Excel. Now I just ask AI, tell me this. It saves me a lot of time. And companies, about 80% of them are using AI in at least one function. And they may be using AI to have a customer support bot or to do invoice and expense processing, saving people a lot of time, again, for these routine, repetitive tasks. But that's just the bicycle. That's just riding the bicycle on this journey. What about getting more towards driving a car? Well, it turns out that AI can also augment what humans do in pretty powerful ways. Now, I could talk about a ton of use cases here, but let me focus on one, which is pattern recognition. It turns out AI is extraordinary at recognizing patterns that are very difficult for humans to recognize in vast quantities of data. If we take, for example, fraud or defects, or even identifying tumors in a mammogram, right? It turns out that a study by Mass General showed that AI was actually better at detecting tumors in a mammogram than human radiologists. So we're looking at how AI can actually augment through its powerful pattern recognition capability. And by the way, we don't even really understand how it's doing that, which is a little bit scary. But other examples of pattern recognition are customer insights, right? Think about an online retailer that might be selling skinny jeans, and somebody might say, well, let's do a cross-promotion here. A natural item to cross-promote might be a belt. Well, AI might tell us, you know what? Looking at all this pattern of consumption data, you probably actually want to promote cell phone or your smart device insurance. That might be the better option here. Okay? So helping us make better, smarter decisions. But what if we look at, okay, that's driving the car, but what does it mean to really be in a rocket ship with AI? Well, to do that, we have to move more towards agentic AI. How many of you have heard of agentic AI? Yeah, okay, lots of hands going up here. What does that mean? Well, instead of just, I'm a person giving AI a specific task, right, and it's doing this repetitive task for me and saving me a lot of time, suddenly I'm giving AI a goal. And I'm telling the AI proactively to go out and process against this goal and then come back with a result, right? And when I start to do that at scale, across tons of processes all over the organization. That's very powerful. And I think we get to very much a future that I believe is our future. And the closest quote that I could find to this is a CEO of NVIDIA who basically says, yeah, we have 50,000 employees and 100 million agents operating across the organization. That probably is the future. I can't tell you, is that in 5 years and in 10 years? No one knows. But that is most likely the future that we're talking about here. That is huge transformation, huge value transformation when we think about millions of agents operating across an organization. So it could be a company or an agency if we're talking about the public sector. But basically, what it means is we're going from an individual and a task to team process to the AI operating at that level and actually determining the strategy of that organization. That is huge, right? When we think about it, not necessarily easy though. The amount of value that you can unlock when suddenly there's no friction in all of those transfers that are happening across processes, across functions into the broader organization. Doesn't happen overnight. Turns out it's very, very difficult to do this. Now, one of the things that companies are finding, and this is sort of hot off the press, and MIT did some research, McKinsey also, that while 80% of companies have active pilots going on, 70 to 80% of those pilots are failing. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we have to experiment and fail a bit to really learn, right? What can work, what can't work. But it turns out that it's actually pretty difficult when you're talking about having task and process intelligence to think through, okay, I have this process. It's not just about where can I plug in AI in this process, right? It's about thinking through how do I re-architect this entire process if I'm thinking about having 60 to 70% of it done by agents, right? That's a whole different ballgame. And when you think about all these processes across organizations and thinking through what would it look like if agents were doing the majority of this process, this is a whole different way of going about it and very, very challenging. So what do the studies say about why all these AI pilot projects are failing? Well, it turns out, there are 3 reasons, and I'm going to talk about each one of these a little bit. First of all, people just aren't trained up in basic AI literacy, right? We just aren't giving people the skills and the capabilities to handle this. Second is, and this is very important, resistance to change, right? These are the human factors that are blocking the progress here. People are scared and they're resistant to the change that we're seeing. And then third, well, it's not plugging well into the existing processes. This is what we were talking about before when I was talking about task intelligence, process intelligence, and really rethinking how we might engineer these processes. So what can we do here? Well, if we know that that's failing, we have to look at the AI journey if we're going to get to the rocket ship. And by the way, those companies that get to the rocket ship stage with agentic AI across the entire are going to be the winners in their industries and their sectors. Without a question, those will be the success stories. Those that are able to re-architect all the processes faster, better, will be the winners. But they'll also be the ones who pursue a human-centered AI approach in their AI journey. So when we talk about human centers, we have to address the 3 problems that are currently blocking success. We need to provide everyone with basic AI literacy, right? Managers need to make time for learning. Should be at least 2 to 4 hours a month for every employee to experiment. You can't learn AI by reading a book, okay? You've got to roll up your sleeves and work on some projects, right? Really start to wrestle with this. And we've got to allow employees to have that time. So managers have to make sure that there's learning happening, that there's training available, and not a bad idea to tie it a bit to performance, right, to those performance objectives. Then you have to address change. So what's blocking? We have to talk openly about the fears, the concerns that employees have. You've got to get that on the table. And then you have to, and this turns out the research says that you have to make it very, very clear to every employee how we're going to use AI, for what purpose, and how we're not going to use AI. Needs to be spelled out. So a charter is not a bad idea. And then the third thing, which is really, really important to the idea of re-engineering these processes, is you can't have an AI lab off to the side with some data folks, some IT folks, and some folks from the business and expect that to work. You really have to surface the use cases, the best use cases for AI from those who really know the processes in the organization well. Right? So you need to involve employees in focus groups and other vehicles for letting those use cases bubble up. And when you do that, you'll identify the more potentially successful projects, right, for the organization to explore. Okay. Let me talk one more second on workforce upskilling. So there are 4 areas that you really need to think about in terms of upskilling. And, not everybody needs extensive training in AI governance, but some cohorts in the organization do. So you have to identify which cohort benefits most from which type of training, and the level of intensity of the training should match the need of the cohort. So not everybody needs to program in TensorFlow. Okay, let's reserve that for the engineering folks. A lot of people need the basics in AI literacy. Leaders of the organization or the agency really need to understand how do we unlock value from AI. So the upskilling and the training needs to match what individual roles are doing with respect to the AI initiatives. But I will say all of us at some point will be AI model managers, right? We're all going to be getting our hands wet with analyzing and looking at the results of AI models and interpreting those for the benefits of the population that we serve. I want to leave you with one final encouraging note. This has been a lot about, hey, AI is going to ultimately be very present in our work lives, and that's true. But human strengths remain central. Okay, those are not going away. We still need to, input our judgment. We need context remains critical. We need leadership. We need relationship building. That doesn't go away. The soft skills, right? Soft skills will be very important. And just general social skills, creativity, right? AI generates, but humans give meaning and context. And AI only knows what it knows. It's humans that will push the boundaries, right? That will push the boundaries to the new. Ethics and accountability, very important human skills AI doesn't have. And then domain expertise will still be very, very important. So that sort of functional and domain expertise that you uniquely have will continue to be important in this landscape. So I know this has been very fast, but hopefully it's given you a quick overview, and I am going to pass this along to Alex.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm Alex Bosenberg. I work for the International Society of Automation. So with the A being automation, pro AI. I've been with ISA for 3.5 months. When I crafted these slides, I was at the 3-month point. So I consider myself an AI novice. So we've had show of hands all day about who knows AI really, really well. Who considers themselves to be an AI novice? Okay, and that's why we're here. And so I wasn't sure what to do in terms of starting. Now, I will say I have 17 years nonprofit experience, and a lot of that in automation, industrial automation, and building automation. So yes, I'm qualified to speak, but AI, how to do that. So The first thing I thought to do was ask our own large language model inside of ISA, MIMO. This is a shameless plug for MIMO. If you have a question about automation standards, ask. You get 3 free questions a day anymore, and you have to be a member. And we have seen throughput of people joining, it's not that expensive, just to be able to ask MIMO harder questions and get deeper answers. So it's our in-house large language model. It's really intended originally for our members to help them find that standard or the reference. We have, when I counted it, 13 varieties of intellectual property, only one of which is standards. The wealth of tech reports that are how you apply a standard to a given application. We do have tech reports for building automation. And so forth. So I asked MIMO, what do we have that applies to building automation? And it gave me those standards listed and summaries of each of them. So that gave me a little bit of a footing to work in. And then it mentioned other things that are very relative, not quite tangential, but directly related. There for building automation, human-machine interface, which you've heard about already. And I will get to a slide later that says AI is not coming for your job. The whole point of using AI effectively is to make your job better, less repetitive. And this is a great point, and I thought of it when Heidi was talking. I was having a conversation at lunch when you said 4,000 apps last year. Right now, everybody thinks AI is going to take over and do everything. 10 years ago, I was leading an initiative at the National Electrical Manufacturers Association to get a grip on what additive manufacturing, 3D printing meant for manufacturing and the critical infrastructure. And at the time, all the media said, everything's going to be printed from now on. That's all there's going to be. That's it. And that is absolutely not true. It's got a great utility. I have more than one 3D printer at home just because I can. But it doesn't do absolutely everything. And there's lots of reasons for it, and that's not the purpose of this brief, so I won't belabor it, but just say that everybody thought 3D printing was going to replace everything, and it didn't. So I feel better about AI. So getting more relevant into workforce, the first example I just gave about when I said, I don't know where to start, MIMO, what do we got? That's how you get the jump start on something. If you want to talk about an entry level or a mid-level position, your boss wants you to get smart on something and provide him or her with a brief or a summary so they don't have to do hours of Google searching and reading. You can get that with a good prompt in AI, and then that person running the prompt is more informed and then hands that to their superior, who also becomes more informed and prepared for whatever this topic is. So it gives you a leg up, but it doesn't replace you having to read and self-educate and ask questions. You can ask them to yourself and then type it into Google, or you can ask Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT, but either way, there's still a back and forth. And as was mentioned earlier today, garbage in, garbage out. Somebody said quality of the information you give it. I'm learned computing in the 1980s. Not to say I'm that old, but I am. Garbage in, garbage out. And so, but the more you inform yourself, the better you give into it. So it can give you these drafts, it can give you these things, and it gets you to the more important or the more interesting part of your job sooner, how to make a decision on something or what to decide to focus on. Again, your individual productivity can also be enhanced through AI. A lot of organizations, we heard some earlier today, are implementing AI internally, not these public models like Claude, Gemini, et cetera, but internal. Besides MIMO, right now, ISA has 2 internal employee-only inside the firewall AI models to help us search our own databases, whether it's the ISA database as a whole or my individual productivity database. We have a tremendous number of productivity tools. We've got Outlook, we've got Teams, we've got messaging, Windows Messenger. Everybody here has got this host of things they have to keep an eye on during the day. And you have communications in those tools about a decision or about why you're not going to do something and so forth. And when you're trying to do something a month from now, you try and remember that conversation or where did I put that email? Was it an email or was it a document somebody sent me? We have an AI that helps us find that. And it saves me, theoretically, an hour of searching. Or we've all try to find an email and can't. Well, if you have an internal AI, you can use it for that. It saves me an hour. I'm down. So I want folks to think of AI as something that's not undercutting the utility of junior employees in particular, but it's something to help educate and inform them. And it gives you, again, a jump ahead. And so you can still do deep dive reading and self-educate, but you can also get summaries that really help. And it's something that we're going to increasingly see it in with agents starting to facilitate collaboration better. I don't think I put it in the slide, so this is the right time to say it. I worked in regulatory affairs for about 15 years. And every time the good old US government drops a proposed rule or a technical support document, you have 2,000 to 3,000 pages of goodness to wade through, to try to find the patterns, to try to find did the people that wrote chapter 4 even read chapter 7, which is directly relevant, or did they just look at the summary and pull the numbers out and not realize that they put two mutually exclusive things together as a way to make the world better? It's our job to point that out in advocacy. And so AI can give me that summary a lot faster, but it won't change the fact that I still have to go and read those 3,000 pages because AI is going to miss that nugget or nuggets of information of those don't go together, but somebody accidentally said they should. So other ways to use AI. First of all, I think anybody who feels like they wish they knew more about AI, there's so many tools out there. Just go and find one. I took a course in LinkedIn Learning from Association Academy. If you work for an association, I recommend their catalog. You might find something you like. We did 5 sessions, 1 hour apiece, and it took us from the ground up. Most of us admitted we didn't know anything. We might have submitted queries, but we really didn't know what we were doing. He introduced us to us and then gave us prompts and coached us to what to do. And so I told it I wanted it to do a trade association member webinar aimed at existing members with the idea, which we're always doing in associations, of reminding the members of the services and the information we have that they have access to. They just need to know about it. And the purpose of reminding that, of course, is so that they'll perceive value in the organization and want to continue to work with us and remain members in the case of a trade association. So I worked on queries, and it generated this webinar, and it wasn't bad. The part that unsettled me a little bit was it found me on LinkedIn, so it knew where I worked, so it did everything with my company branding, and I didn't tell it to. But you could say that that was good, right? Then we had it generate audio. A man and a woman had a conversation about that podcast developed from that webinar that I had 5 minutes of input to. Our media group are not going to use it. It's not going to do what we needed, but it's, considering the amount of work I put into it, it was pretty interesting. And I think we talked about information quality. AI is still prone to what they're deciding to call now hallucinations, where it gets just wrapped up in the data and starts telling things, and you get summer book reading recommendations for books that don't exist, along with summaries of the books that didn't exist and why you should read them. So people still have to fact check AI, even though it's got all the facts in the world literally at its fingertips. So what about workforce? So I wanted to draw upon my knowledge at the Electrical Manufacturers Association, industrial automation and building controls, where I helped develop training years ago for lighting controls and other building automation systems. And they still provide that training, though thankfully updated by now. So what could you use in AI in a building? So from my perspective, the first thing is the building could introduce itself to new staff members and tell them what it does, where it does it, and how it does it. The construction and function of the building, whether it's for a facilities member or a tenant, can now be done in a conversation with the building. We also talked about data gathering and analysis earlier, and in the same ways, what's now being done by SCADA systems but you still need a human to really evaluate the results, that the data points that are being gathered by the system. Now AI will get a hold of that and give you even better predictive maintenance recommendations. You've got 6 electric motors running the compressors for your building HVAC system. And even though it's nowhere near the red line, the bearings on motor number 4 continue to heat up a little more than the others. Why is that? Well, it hasn't been used any more than any of the others. So AI is going to tell you, or could tell you, hey, go and get a handheld thermometer IR gun and hit it. And first of all, is the sensor correct? And if not, we better schedule number 4 for a teardown to see why that bearing's having a problem. Rather than wait until the hottest day of the year when you got all 6 running at maximum, and that's the time number 4 decides to overheat. Let's see. Oh, and very much in that vein, a building automation AI can then not just predict maintenance, but also lead facility staff or the construction crews during the digital twin evaluation process of running through casualty drills. Talking about overheating one of your critical components during the hottest day of the year. Well, how do you react to that? You don't want to turn to the what one earlier presenter called the pale, stale male there, who is expected to know what to do to correct this casualty because he's been through a few. Instead, you've prepared for it by using your AI to train your staff. So anybody can do it. And the AI can flag it immediately, and someone's already running for the right panel. And another way to use AI, and similar to that, that my media team asked me to put here, is that we have a very popular escape room. Those are I seem to see those everywhere now. We did a cybersecurity escape room for our members at one of our operational technology cybersecurity summits. We've done 2 now, and it took our members who understand cybersecurity and led them through a ransomware attack event on a modeled offshore oil and gas production unit. And by using the tenets of our standards, if they applied them correctly, they were able to escape from the ransomware threat. So again, here's the slide I mentioned. Is AI going to take our jobs? Our official policy is no, it will change them. So my example from the building environment is, in the 1960s, most building lighting was basically fluorescent or incandescent, at least inside. You might have HID outside for landscape, but it was basically 2 types of technology, and it was mostly snap switches or done right at the breaker. And your lights were on or off. And there are so many pictures from very recent years, like New York City and some of the larger places where you have these huge populations of buildings where they just left the lights on all night because nobody wanted to bother to turn them off. Or they might be controlled at the breaker and no one's going to do that but the building electrician. Well, now, years ago, they started installing lighting control and building automation systems that take into account how many people are in the building. Is it a weekend? Is it a holiday? Yes, it's Monday, but it's a holiday. Or do we even have anybody in here? We can scale back the HVAC because we don't expect many people. Well, that's the current technology. The new technology is we can track how many people are in the building, where they are. Do they need lights, and where does the cooling or heating need to be? And if you think about thermostats, we went from the bimetallic mercury switch on the wall in one room of the house to now and it was just on or off. And now we have efficient real-time data management of the HVAC in a building or in our homes if you have one of the smart thermostats. Somebody gave me one. I really didn't need the heat settings to follow me around the house, so I turned that part off, but they can do it. Another, is AI going to eliminate your jobs and change them? An example is there's no such thing as a typewriter repairman anymore, but it used to be a viable career. Well, there's still computer repair, and so it changed, but it's still very relevant. Almost the same thing, but it's updated. So, and another building example, or for me, a Navy example, go Navy, is a person walking around and taking, mechanically writing down instrumentation of all the gauges in a facility, or in my case, on a ship. Well, that was replaced by networked instrumentation. First it was wired, then it became wireless, and then now it goes to a building manager, can just be getting prompts on their phone and taking care of the building from anywhere. So I mentioned this already. We've already seen, and heard about, and we'll all, no doubt, come across examples where AI is going to make mistakes. And that's why humans in the loop are still important and will continue to be. Now I want to mention the Chicago Sun-Times oopsie. It's all right, just in front of the whole world. Some of this is because generative AI reads the output of another generative AI, and I think of it as the most horrible game of telephone you can imagine, where one computer is having a conversation with another computer, and they think they've solved the problems of the world, and all they did was put raccoons on the moon. So give it good quality data, and as appropriate for your organization, fence that data in. I said we have 3 AIs right now. We have a 4th we're developing at ISA. Only one can be accessed by the public. The rest you need to log in. And even our members can only see MIMO. It's only staff that can use the other 2, and soon to be a 3rd one, which I really hope can make my job easier. But we have to improve the quality of the data going into it so I can have a conversation with it and ask it about trends in the interest of people in purchasing or our IP or taking our training, which is a lot of what we do. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That was a great lecture of what AI can do, and a great backdrop for what I have to share. And I'm going to explore how AI is shaping design and compliance functions, specifically engineering, design, and compliance, shifting user behaviors, creating new demands for organizations and the workforce, or not. We'll see. Because our goal is to ground this conversation into what is happening as opposed to what is hyped, and looking ahead to what's coming next. I work at Outsell. We're an advisory company, and we bring 30 years of experience in B2B information services and technology. We have 3 service lines, and we track more than $1 trillion spent across 15,000 vendors in 22 markets. And that gives us a good vantage point on where disruption's coming from and what it means for you. And my vertical is engineering standards. So I work with standards and codes publishers. Skipping the table of contents, let's take a step back, because I would like to frame this conversation and look at changes roiling all knowledge-intensive industries. Because disruption only happens when we change the old familiar ways and adopt the new ways to do old things. And that is why generative AI, about which we've been talking all day today, and its large language models such as ChatGPT, is such a disruptive force, because it's fundamentally disrupting the way information is consumed. It brings an extraordinary change of digital tools, that's true. But also, if you look at the graph, we used to spend a lot of time on the left side of the graph, identifying information we need, looking for it, bringing it in, acquiring it, analyzing it. Well, those times are gone. Now the distance between information and decision-making is much, much shorter. And actually, users are no longer looking for information. They're asking the question, what are the next steps? And that's definitely a transition from what was normal even 5 years ago, before ChatGPT was introduced. And that brings new demands to information consumption processes across the industries, and new expectations for data accuracy, for project timelines, for access to expert knowledge. Another set of trends that is reshaping our expectations has to do with end users and the way they're taking control over their own information consumption processes. We see a combined impact of trends driving the end user behavior, and also raising expectations about the baseline digital maturity of organizations. And digital maturity is when data is driving decision-making and processes are digitally facilitated. And it has a lot to do with automation, but it's kind of bigger than that. although sometimes these terms are used interchangeably, and I will use them interchangeably in this presentation: digital maturity and automation of processes. And the road to digital maturity is actually a series of leaps with the single objective of saving people time. It's a never-ending process, but we have definitely progressed to the next stage in this quest, in many ways due to the three trends that I'm talking about here. The first of them is that the C-suite looks different these days. Tech-savvy executives are advancing to the boardrooms. Millennials make up more than a third of the workforce, and these people are a lot more comfortable with adopting technology. They know about its limitations, but many are fluent coders. They're very good at experimenting, and they're very much more open to bringing technology into the workforce to augment the workflows. That changes decision-making dynamics. Tech stack purchases are being shaped directly by leaders who are comfortable with technology and much less risk-averse. So that definitely raises the baseline expectation of the digital maturity of the workforce. The second trend contributing to this is the hybrid workforce, the lasting legacy of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's accelerated digital maturity just like the tech-savvy C-suite. Every leap in remote and hybrid collaboration adds pressure to modernize systems, and the keyword here is integration, not just the availability of tools, but how the tools talk to each other, how the systems work when combined. We see the rise of digitally driven strategic intelligence, shared intelligence, and intelligence tools replacing in-person interactions. That's, of course, a natural transition that we all observe. Knowledge sharing has shifted from conference rooms and water cooler conversations to collaborative platforms. And perhaps the most powerful trend is the disruptive shift in end-user behavior, where end users gaining autonomy over knowledge acquisition, over information acquisition, where we used to have a library or a centralized competitive intelligence hub in a big organization, or at least a centralized purchasing department responsible for knowledge acquisition. Well, that is going away. Now, end users have full authority about what they need to do their jobs, what fits their roles best, where to get this, and that has to do with information needs and also workflow tools. Users are empowered to make these decisions. And I want you to hold this thought as we talk about the impact on workflows. So, impact on workflows. We have completed a study recently where I was fortunate enough to talk to professionals in engineering design and compliance functions specifically. You know how fragmented built environment is. So we appreciate the fact that we've reached to over 30 professionals in these functions to find out what's happening when it comes to automation or digital maturity of the organization and the adoption of AI. We wanted to look beyond just the advantages advertised by vendors. And we understand what really gets adopted by professionals and what doesn't get adopted and why not. And also to review the rise of digital maturity alongside the adoption of AI because, well, of their symbiotic nature. They definitely feed off each other, they support each other, they are used in parallel. And because there are lessons in the baseline automation adoption that are relevant to the implementation of AI solutions. Well, starting with automation. Maturity remains low to medium. Most organizations rate themselves at levels 2 or 3 on the 4-point scale. Just a reminder, this is design and compliance functions. The question was very simple, 4-point scale. Level 1, we're doing everything the way we're doing it 30 years ago. Level 4, if there is a tool on the market, we're exploring it. So most organizations are a tentative 2, and I'm quoting, tentative 2. And here it's interesting, it's not the availability of tools and toys, it's how they are interconnected. Or how the data from one tool transfers to the data in another tool, even though it's the same data from the same organization. So that's where professionals see a huge gap. Tools are often broad and enterprise-wise, but workflows still rely on manual links, or what we call the human connecting tissues among those tools, or between the tool and a source of information such as standards. A very, very common scenario when a state-of-the-art tool will still have to be manually, the data for the state-of-the-art tool still have to be manually input by the engineer, and you can imagine how that slows down the process and pretty much negates the benefits of the tool. Knowledge repositories remain fragmented, and digital-first environments are dependent on external vendors and integrations, and that's a risk in itself. And there's also competitive dynamics between cutting-edge solutions and legacy systems that are already in place. I should also mention that we spoke to large organizations as well as medium-sized organizations, small organizations. They're all experiencing the same issues. Especially when it comes to integration capabilities, large organizations complain that through mergers and acquisitions that would require a lot of disparate sets of ecosystems, not the one single ecosystem that doesn't function, but they would have 5 ecosystems that don't function. And now they're looking at integrating all of it all at once. It's a harder problem to solve than for a medium-sized organization, acquiring state-of-the-art tools that are now available. Right. However, despite all this, the direction is clear. There is more automation on the roadmap, and it's very, very urgent. Like there is no denying the fact that more automation is coming. So the digital maturity of the workplace is going up. AI adoption. You will not be surprised to see that the adoption level is #1. We didn't expect anything else. It's perfectly normal. There are early wins that are in areas like search, summarization, and requirements extraction, just examples. We see AI pilots designed to test the waters. We see blanket bans of AI in some organizations, and at the same time, a lot of unsanctioned use. And that's a very interesting takeaway. So on the one hand, an organization would be saying, no, we're not using AI. That's the official position. On the other hand, the engineers are using AI as a cheat code for design. In compliance, AI is used for monitoring, but strictly not for interpretation of the findings. And yes, AI adoption at a very, very low stage, but it's moving faster, especially it's moving faster at the edges of the organization than at the core. Often it's not centrally driven. So see above, autonomous, empowered end user. So if AI comes with well-recognized risks, into which I will not go, will design and compliance professionals ever adopt enough of it to truly disrupt workflows? And what kind of threshold will AI have to clear in the minds of end users and decision makers for that to happen? So this study revealed that the threshold that AI will have to clear in users, from the user's perspective is AI autonomy, precisely what Heidi was talking about, agents. So I created this graph to kind of plot the responses where on one hand you see AI autonomy, and that's the ability of the machine to act without human intervention, to provide judgment calls, to direct human actions in any way, interpretation, advice, any conclusions. And then on the other axis, you see the freedom to experiment. This is not AI's freedom to experiment, this is the freedom to experiment, creative freedom in general. That's why we have compliance closer to the kind of low end of it and design on the other side of it, because compliance is a lot more structured. Most organizations, in terms of AI, cautious AI implementation, now sit in the lower left corner with pre-filtered lists, monitors of updates. If it's design, it could be automated requirements extraction, local, when based on one single set of content, nothing really too ambitious. It's above the AI autonomy threshold that we will find truly disruptive use cases that are capable of truly rewriting workflows, completely reshaping professional fields of knowledge, for better or worse, just in general. They will make a real difference. So the next phase of adoption will have to move up into the right, into the design, allowing more experimentation and granting AI greater autonomy, but with the right safeguards in place, of course. And current use cases are a lot more limited. And there will be LLMs for ad hoc searches or pre-filtered lists or monitoring updates. But these are the early win points that will pave the way for more integrated and more powerful solutions. So will AI reshape work? Yes, it will, but not in a single stroke. Expert and specialist roles are the slowest to adapt AI right now. They will continue to be augmented, not replaced. Scripted roles, however, where workflows are highly defined, even now, and the throughput is the bottleneck to productivity, are the most at the risk of automation. The winners will be generalists who embrace reskilling and who embrace constant learning. And this has major implications for higher education and also for how organizations approach onboarding and training. Both onboarding and training are ripe for AI-driven disruption, and Alex alluded to that as well. Well, AI is a reality, just as automation is a reality, so most organizations, all organizations need to be thinking about how to adopt it successfully. So there are a few tips. First of all, organizations need to tailor solutions to specific roles. There is no one-size-fits-all. Well, that's a pitfall that some publishers that I work with are falling into. They think they need to look for a specific format that will fit all of their users. That format doesn't exist. It has to be very niche and very specific as far as the use case. So define and prioritize niche use cases that deliver clear value. It could be a starting point. It could be all you'll ever do. But even there, you could reap good value. Implement cybersecurity guardrails to mitigate risks. That's an absolute must. I should probably move it up because that's what everybody brought up when we spoke about risks. That was a number one risk on everybody's mind. C-suite or design engineers or compliance manager. Embed human judgment checkpoints. AI should augment, not replace decision making. Also, otherwise there will be no adoption. Professionals will push back. They will just not buy into that. And finally, balance management enthusiasm with operational anxiety by fostering culture that enables adoption. Culture is often the make or break factor in all AI initiatives. Okay, and with that, thank you, and I look forward to your questions and discussion.
I believe these are on.
Okay, great. Well, great. Thank you, everybody. That concludes our slides, and we're going to shift to Jim, and we're going to really talk about some real-world practical examples of AI. So we wanted to really start, Jim, just with some Q&A in terms of, you've been in business development a lot in your career. How have you used AI from a decision-making perspective, from practical implementation, and just how are you using it to accelerate some of the tools that you're delivering or some of the messages? Because the business of business development is still very human, one-to-one relationships. So how do you marry the two together?
So I have a confession to make. This is the first time I'm saying this in a public forum. I feel like a kid in a candy store using AI. I have to tell you, I couldn't be more excited about this chapter in my life, being able to actually have intelligence come to me so rapidly. I wasn't this excited even when I got a flip phone, for those of you who can remember our first phones we had back then. In all seriousness, I wanted to give you an example. So my name is Jim Thomas. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of how I use AI. I'm going to give you an example. So in a week, I'm going to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and Dubai for some business development opportunities that ANSI has in the region. And over the years, one of the first things I learned being in sales and business development for about 30 years at this point is it's all about discovery and understanding what the opportunity could be, asking probing questions and taking the time to really spend with an individual to understand their wants and needs and hopes and dreams. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do that when I go to the Middle East, but it's amazing what a plan I have already built for me because of the questions that I've been asking ChatGPT, prompting with the situational, the industries that I'm looking to work with, the partners that I'm looking to work with. And so I have 8 meetings over the 4 days that I'm in the region, and I've been able to already in advance provide thoughts and considerations for the people I'm going to be meeting during my time there. I've also been able to put in our world, having an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, is a really good thing to have in advance. And out of the 8 meetings, I've been able to already put together the thoughts and the business rationale and the value for those partners well advanced of the meeting so that I have something for them to sign. We have some movement. This is not just a conversation. I'm not flying over there to spend the company's time and money. I actually have a direction. And that's all because I took the time to use ChatGPT, put in the prompts, and it's quite amazing actually because it works on a global level. We talk about all the information that we can get locally, but it's amazing all the critical content that I would not have been aware of with regards to regulatory information in the Gulf, or the Saudi vision for 2030 and the different components that I'm now able to match up with my core capabilities. So, that's my long-winded way of saying I couldn't be more excited to see what's next. I don't even think that I know all the proper ways to use it at this point. So I did download an app called Cursive. I do have my 28-day challenge. I do think it's interesting. I do want to download the thing that I can make art with because, my God, that's so interesting, right? So, AI for me, from a business development standpoint, I'm able to get to the end faster. I still have to have those direct relationships with people because that's how the business is going to be done. But they have been so impressed so far that we don't have to have the entire discovery phase, and we're coming with real world practical applications for their environment. And I should say that I'm focusing on a national quality infrastructure, if that means anything for anybody. We have these different components around ANSI with regards to standards and accreditation and workforce development, things like that. So I'm pretty excited about the opportunity, and I wouldn't have been so excited probably if I didn't use ChatGPT to get some quality information ahead of time.
That's great. No, I think that having that real world perspective is really important. So what do you think is really going to change with AI, and what do you think is going to remain the same? You talked about the relationship side of it, and you also talked about how AI has really helped you in terms of accelerate, some of your, planning and preparation. But if you had to balance the two, how would you describe that?
It's interesting because I'm at a organization that's I guess it's close to 100 years old, or maybe it's over 100 years old now. It's been around for a long time. And so we have different pockets of the organization that are excited about automation. They're excited about using AI. But then you have pockets of individuals, whether they're nervous about their job, whether they're nervous about the interpretation, that actively fight against the change with AI. So I think it depends on strong leadership within your organization and reading the tea leaves of the environment you're in. I work for a not-for-profit standards development organization. Notoriously, we are very slow. But with AI, we don't actually have to be anymore. We can make informed decisions, feel really good about the bets that we're making, and then be able to innovate at the speed of industry. I don't see personal relationships changing. I see that as more of a skill, especially in the world where people barely look up. You better be able to have a conversation with somebody still, because you're going to be packed with relevant information that's going to excite them. So those personal relationships, those soft skills that you have, combined with technology, is going to be what makes our organizations and us as individuals successful.
And you worked prior to ANSI, and I know you also were at ASTM. You worked at a company called Accurus, and Accurus is an online platform delivering content and tools to pretty much all the major sectors. And so you worked with some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Over the last year as AI, really the last 2 years, but I would say over the last year in particular, what did you see customers wanting and your clients wanting from AI tools?
Well, unfortunately for most of the world that I'm in, the cat's already out of the bag, so to speak, meaning that industry has already been using internal LLMs for a very long time. They've been integrating with their PLM, product lifecycle management systems, for many, many years. And so, over the last year, what I've seen is a pushback from my industry through FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because they don't want to give the proper licensing to people because they themselves don't know how to distinguish the difference between AI, GAI, traceability, attribution, hallucinations, all of these things. So I've seen a real challenge for intellectual property owners and people that own copyright to be able to make a decision, more or less. And I've seen it's at the cost of industry moving faster. They're already doing it behind the scenes. They want to do it properly. They want to license properly. They want to have the attribution to the content. They want to make sure that they're doing everything. But because my industry is so nervous because of a lack of understanding in many cases and misinformation from within from various reasons. Somebody doesn't want to lose their job. They love the bloat of the IT staff. No offense to IT people out there, but this is what happens. So all these conversations for progress get derailed.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jim.
Sure, thank you.
So in our remaining minutes before we open up to the for questions, I have one question I want to ask the panelists. Just kind of leave your final thoughts. If you had to describe a future-ready workforce that has really, embraced AI throughout the organization, what would you see? What would your vision for that look like? Whether that's 6 months from now, 2 years from now, but in the future. Start with Ida.
So a future-ready workforce really is prepared with basic AI literacy. You really have to understand the fundamentals of how AI works, the importance of clean, quality data. And I think paired with that, you want people who are creative thinkers. You want people who are critical thinkers. You want people who have good social interaction skills. So you want to pair really, really strong soft skills. We can't take our foot off the accelerator there. In fact, push it down harder. But that combined with really strong AI literacy skills. And again, as I was saying, it depends on sort of what your role is in the organization, where you want to put the emphasis. Is it on governance? Is it on, the engineering side? But I think that combination really is the workforce that's going to be best prepared to handle what's going to happen in the next 6 months and next 5 years and onward.
Excellent. Alex?
I would echo everything Haida said. That was an excellent point. And to give that an analogy, I went through a job search within the last year, and a lot of the job positions right now, the listings still say high fluency with the Microsoft Office suite. They're going to start saying AI proficiency, because it's not enough to, I don't have to make a PowerPoint presentation anymore. I know how to manipulate it, but I'll have AI generate it. There's that, and I echo again the soft skills. So to find something new to say, we had a great conversation about changes in the skills needs from the workforce and how I think everyone here is familiar with the 4-year college model and how that's no longer sufficient for what we need in terms of the job skills and the millions of soon-to-be unfilled job openings coming as industry innovates and then new jobs are coming. And so skills relevant to better training of people and educating them about their opportunities. I never really felt like my son has to go to college, but that was beaten into me when I was in school. You can get a 6-figure job now working data center installation right out of your qualifications once you're certified. And that, I know that's not a lot of money in DC, but it's still really good in rural Indiana where I'm from. So there's a lot of changes in mindset that have to happen, including how you have to be educated and how you should educate yourself.
Thank you. Tatiana?
Yes, and I would like to build on that, Alex, and also take a point from my own presentation about generalists reskilling and upskilling as they progress through their career. So people who are well prepared for the future workforce are people who are really responsible about their own growth. So they will not expect their employer to tell them what classes they need to take. They will not expect their parents to push them towards a certain career. They will not expect to get a diploma once in a lifetime, put it on a shelf, and then have a career for the foreseeable future. Again, I think this time is already over. So a successful person in the future will always be looking for opportunities to upskill and reskill. And that successful person might have completed just 2 years of college, not 4 years of college, to become that well-versed generalist, kind of a Renaissance person in a new sense, able to absorb information really quickly, staying very curious within his or her field and moving towards what interests them more or what benefits their employer more. And yes, we will need an infrastructure around this that will include the current higher education and trades education infrastructure that we have now, but the system will also have to change and adapt really fast.
Great, and Jim?
Yeah, I just think it's about imagination. I look forward to seeing what we can dream up next. This morning there was a great session from the military group. Or do we have any people still in the room that were presenting during that session? Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge to the group here that I didn't know about that, and I look forward to my train ride home today to going to ChatGPT to see how we could support that great, unbelievable mission. That's what I look forward to with these experiences, meeting new people on these panels, being able to have an imagination of what we could do together and use the technology to be able to piece things together that I wouldn't be able to get over a couple-minute introduction call. So those are my thoughts about why I'm excited about it. It's the realm of possibilities that it unleashes.
That's great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for the really informative presentations from our panelists and all the preparation that went into it. So thank you for that. And we'll open it up to if there's any questions in the audience. Yes. Is there a mic, Jennifer? Okay.
Definitely want to thank the panelists. It is indeed an exciting opportunity as AI continues to grow. My question, as it continues to exponentially grow and become part of our everyday lives, all the while we still have a digital divide of roughly about 3.7 billion people who are offline globally. What are your thoughts on how there isn't bias or further harm that's created as we're seeking to grow a dynamic workforce in construction and close those gaps?
Haida, you want to take that one?
That's a tough one. I think, yes, we still have people who are not online. That is creating a divide. I think we have to work towards helping everyone become more educated and familiar with how to incorporate and use AI. I think it's not an excuse. I think we have to create greater enablement. Bias with AI is going to be a big problem. And that is where we still need the human intervention in interpreting the outcomes of AI and make sure that we're not building bias into our models. And I think, when I think about the risks, that kinds of goes to the top of the list. Serious concerns around making sure that we are appropriately controlling for the bias that will work its way in. And how that, could negatively affect, society.
Thank you. Other questions?
Just one?
Thank you. I really enjoyed everybody's comments earlier, but I know for me, one of my bigger concerns are these soft skills that you all mentioned. And I'm finding that as AI continues to grow, that we're seeing kind of two ends of the spectrum really show their head. And one is those who weren't necessarily brought up with it and having that true skepticism because they have a lot of those soft skills already and the relationship building, networking, face-to-face. And then you have that younger generation who is way more accepting of AI, but also more believing of it. So when you talk about that fact checking and talk about that ability, I guess I'm just kind of interested in the panel's comments on how do we teach those analysis skills to those who are just kind of inherently adapting and using AI from that perspective of they haven't been through all the other issues.
Alex, want to take that one?
Yes, I've been going through this with my 16-year-old, and I even do it with family members. And so the analogy I'll give, one analogy is the interesting conversations I can have with people who get their news from Facebook. And I say, that's odd. I read an article in The Atlantic about that, and that's absolutely not what I found in the data that I dug up because I wanted to be sure about it. And that comes back to verify the AI's output. in that case. But I think what you were speaking more to is planting that seed in a person's mind to not just believe everything they read online, Facebook or otherwise. That's never going to change, and we're in an interesting situation where there's basically anybody can put any wild idea on the internet and get a friend to click on it, and before you know it, my father told me a few days ago he's become a flat earther. I have no explanation for that, except he read enough articles that he suddenly thinks, you know what? Yeah, bless him. He's retired. He can go do what he wants. I wish he'd take up models or something. But and another thing that came to mind as you were speaking is that the soft skills. It's we must constantly, regardless if you're a PSM like me or whoever, you have to continue to refine and relearn your soft skills, because I had a millennial hired her right out of grad school at my last job to be my assistant regulatory affairs manager, and great at capstone projects, but when I told her to call somebody and ask them a question, you thought I was asking her to strip naked and jump off the roof. Because she will text, but not call. Because, I don't want to interrupt them or whatever. And so I had to change my soft skills. I had to just say, I want you to contact so-and-so and ask them about this. And if you don't get a response, just elevate your methods and just not say, call them, which is what I would do right away.
All right, well, our clock has hit 0, so we are out of time, but thank you all. This was really a terrific session for your attention, and again, thanks for the panel. And we'll turn it over to Jennifer. Thanks, everybody.